All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual View. It is April. Happy April. It was just April Fool's Day a couple of days ago, and here we are. Sheila and I are coming live to you from our hometown, and Kim is still in Thailand for just a couple more days. So here we are. And today we're going to do a show talking about energetic upgrading and ascension symptoms. But before we do that, I just love to check in with my lovely co-host and see how you're doing and what's the 411. Kim, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm sweaty and hot as hell. It's 38 here today, but I am loving it, living my best life. So everything's great. Yeah, I'm going to soak up everything I can the last 2 days and looking forward to getting home, as we talked about, I think 2 weeks ago, our comforts and that sort of thing. But yeah, so I am doing great.
Awesome. And what about you, Sheila?
I feel good. I had a wonderful weekend with some family or extension of family. So that was good. Teaching yoga, which is my passion. So yeah, weekends are always a blessing for me for sure.
Awesome. And you know what, this is actually this wasn't my suggestion for this topic. It was actually Sheila's, but it's interesting timing because I'm doing okay, but actually if we rewind like about 10 days or so ago, since then I haven't been feeling 100%. Like I woke up on Thursday and about midday, when you kind of like smell cold, like you can smell it and you're like, oh, I think I'm getting sick. And I had that happen to me on Thursday and I was like, oh, I think I'm getting a cold. And so right away I started with like all of the immune stuff, right? Like I was drinking some mushroom, like elixir, an immunity booster. I was running immunity programs on my Healy, and getting an extra hour of sleep, doing all the things to hopefully to kind of ward off whatever it was that I had picked up, right? And Friday morning, I woke up and it was like a lot of like a terrible headache that continued for the next day or so, but then lots of like sinus, nasal and throat stuff. And I thought I was just sick until I was messaging with a girlfriend on WhatsApp. And I said to her, she said, how are you? And I said, well, I'm actually not feeling well. I'm sick. And right at the same time when I said sick, I heard it was like, no, you're upgrading. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm not one to subscribe to I don't say every time I get sick that I'm having ascension symptoms or upgrading. That's not my automatic response. I personally am very discerning about that. But it was interesting then, because what happened is after I had that conversation with her on Friday, the next 2 days, it took about another 12 hours for the headache to go away. But then internally, physically, I felt okay, but I still had all the symptoms. I had either the blocked sinuses or the runny nose that went into my throat. I had the postnasal drip. Tuesday rolled around and I was really, really croaky in here and losing my voice. Wednesday, I did a clearing session and I had to actually pause the clearing session because I went into this huge coughing fit when I was working with my client. So it's been very interesting to watch what's coming up, and I'm still not 100%. I've still got it sitting right here and in the throat, and recognizing that this time around it seems to be some sort of upgrade. But it's perfect timing in terms of this show, because I'd love to hear from both of you. What is first of all, maybe let's just start with something very basic. How would you define ascension symptoms or energetic upgrading? What does that mean to you, or what does that look like for you?
So I'll start with that because it's been kind of something that I've experienced for a while now, for a few years. And it's something that I believe is happening. Do I have scientific proof? No, because that's not what the realm I work in. I work in the intuitive realm. So my intuition is that, yes, as humans, we are upgrading. And one of the things that a lot of the scientists and the light workers are starting to say is that the earth is being injected, if that's the right term, with light. And in order for us to receive this light, our bodies need to upgrade. So we have trillions of cells in our body, and all those cells are doing their thing and they're working along at a certain vibration. Now, when this light is injected in, the trauma and the old stories of those cells, because we all, as light workers, we believe that the body holds the trauma. The physical body holds this. Whether or not you believe that or not is your own prerogative. But we hold these cells in our body, and when this light comes in and it wants to enter into our cells, there needs to be a purging. There needs to be a release of the old energy so that the new light can come in. And there needs to be space to hold this light and this energy. So there's going to be, a bumping against, right? We're going to bring in the light, and the old energy is dense, and it's going to kind of bump against it. And during that bumping against is where I believe the ascension symptoms come up. So that's where we're coming up with the idea that my heart is palpitating. I have these huge heart palpitations. What does that mean? Well, the heart is being released of its old dense energy, and the new energy is moving into it. So that's what I sort of understand ascension symptoms to arrive from, the bumping up against. Now, when we are faced with these ascension symptoms, first of all, you probably want to go see your doctor, because maybe it is something physical. It might be you are having actual heart palpitations. And what happened for me was I actually did go to the doctor, because I was like, this is crazy. My heart is out of control. And the good thing that happened was when I was actually in the doctor's office, my heart was doing the palpitations. And I go, right now, it's doing it right now. So she was able to take her stethoscope and she's like, nothing's happening with your heart. You're completely fine. Your pulse is perfect. Everything is fine. So I was able to see that this was an energetic thing that was happening. So I was able to dismiss that it could be something that I should get taken care of medically. So that worked out really well for me. But when those heart palpitations come in, I've really learned to really appreciate them, rather than go, oh my gosh, I can't sleep. Oh my gosh, this is painful. Oh my gosh. And I start to recognize it as something that is really powerful coming in for me, as rather than something against me. So rather than me fighting against and making more energetic resistance to it, I try to allow it. Sometimes it gets to be too much, and I actually ask for it to slow down and stop for a while. Give me a break. Can you give me a break? Can you give me a break? So that's what I'll do in those situations. So that's kind of my experience with ascension symptoms. And I'm sure Kim and Tracy have their opinion on it as well. But as a healer and a light worker, I also have clients that come in with these as well. And I believe the healing work that I do, and Tracy and Kim and I do, actually helps to alleviate some of these symptoms, because we make space in the body energetically to receive the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love
So
that.
I'll give that back to you guys, but yeah.
Kim, what are your thoughts?
Well, I love this because, and just for those watching, we're a day apart, or almost a day apart. So I wasn't even sure what we were talking about today until just before. And I shared a video earlier this morning on my TikTok, which is kind of all about this. And coming back to what she was talking about, we go into that place of resistance. And one of the things that I've really become more aware of while I'm here in the perfect environment, where there's a lot of opportunity to deal with discomfort, right? We talked about this previously 2 weeks ago, when we're not in our home environment, when we're in places where we don't have access to our comforts and that sort of thing. I think I also shared we've been refreshed with the Eightfold Path and the teachings of the monk in Buddhism. And one of the things I've really become more aware of and practicing is this whole piece on surrendering and not being in resistance. And as Sheila was sharing, what I was thinking about was, ascension symptoms and the best way to deal with them are no different than our regular every day-to-day triggers and traumas, and how to deal with them. And like Sheila said, I think, we tend to go into this place of resistance. We don't want to feel it. We push away. We do whatever to distract, rather than embrace it and say, okay, why is this happening for me? Or how can I move through this? And because I have been so aware of that here, I'm noticing I'm moving through discomforts with so much ease. And it's interesting to have a group here when you have so many other dynamics and everybody are going through different things, right? It's super hot here. I love the heat. Not everybody loves heat. So it's interesting to watch, a group of people adjust to, traveling from place to place and dealing with heat and dealing with, not being able to get Wi-Fi and the frustration with that. And to see, are they going into resistance? Are they going into a place of surrender and acceptance. And really, which path you choose can lead to a very different outcome. And very much like Sheila said, when I am going through something, I do try to approach with love. I think of that acceptance, but also to ask for things to happen with ease and grace and with as much comfort as possible, and also for the understanding. Having said that, one of the other things that keeps coming to me, channeled messaging, is that we don't always have to understand the why behind everything. Sometimes we just need to accept and move forward and trust. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to do because there is such a need to know why sometimes. And I find the more that I practice that, letting go of the need to know the why, it's so much easier to move through things. Any symptoms don't last as long as they used to when we're in that place of resistance and needing to understand or trying to control, if that makes any sense. And I'm sorry if it's noisy.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I love that. And, I feel like I might be a little bit of the devil's advocate in this conversation today, because I actually don't like the word ascension. Or ascension symptoms specifically together. And I feel like ascension symptoms has kind of become like the almost like the pop culture word for metaphysical communities in a way, right? Like I personally anyways didn't hear it a ton let's say like a few years ago when the whole world kind of shut down, right? And then the world shut down and all of a sudden everybody was talking about, the ascension and all of these things. And not to say that I don't believe in it, but what I noticed for me is there's a hesitancy to use the word ascension symptoms. And when I kind of sit into it a little bit and I ask like, why? Because at the same time, I just, shared a story where I'm like, yeah, I'm energetically upgrading. That vibrational, like the vibration that those two words hold has a much, is more resonant to me, I think, than the ascension symptoms. And when I tap into the piece around ascension symptoms, what I notice is that like on a global perspective, like very generalization, let's say, when I tap into the resonance field behind ascension symptoms, there's two big things that come up for me. And one of them is disempowerment. That within using that word, there's the potential, not always, but there's the potential to allow the fact that you're having the ascension symptoms to actually disempower you, right? Meaning that it's taking you over, or you can't function in life, or you're really sick, or it's almost kind of like the empath grid in a way, right? And that's a discernment for me as well, as hearing, and I've heard it from clients so many times, like, well, I'm really sensitive and I'm an empath, so I don't feel good, right? And it's this idea that because I have, it's like we make it more of a crutch or a what's the word I'm looking for, a curse, rather than recognizing that it's actually a gift and that it's an ability that we all have, and that it can actually be in service to us and with us rather than being to our detriment. And so I have that hesitation around ascension symptoms because I feel like sometimes that's what it becomes, right? And the other hesitation that I have around it is sometimes I feel like, depending on how it's used and the tones that are behind it and who is using it, that it also comes with an energy of hierarchy. That now it's created this idea that, oh, well, I'm ascending, so I must be more spiritually, higher or connected or whatever it is, right? And so for me, I don't want that part of it, so I don't plug into it, if that makes sense. But I would love to hear both of your thoughts and your opinions around that as well, your views. Sheila, do you want to go first?
What I feel about that is I'm on board with you as far as that spiritual hierarchy, because I really try to check myself and not go into that space. I feel like the ascension symptoms need to be discussed, and maybe the terminology is something that is somewhat questionable, but I do think it needs to be discussed because I think people are experiencing these things, and it's not that just I'm experiencing it, because I'm a light worker or I understand this stuff. It's every human on the planet is an energetic being, and every human is a spiritual being. And we're starting to understand this. We're starting to recognize this. So probably every human on the planet is experiencing ascension symptoms, whether or not you're, you're a murderer or something that we want to describe as less than. In the spiritual world, there is no hierarchy, as Tracy comments to, and I think we need to really pay attention to that. But I'm ascending, I'm getting greater than everyone else. Really is an oxymoron. It's the opposite. Getting greater than anyone else is the opposite of ascension. Ascension means that you are evolving to a place that you're meant to be at, that we're all humans are meant to be at. So yeah, maybe I can see how that term can be triggering, and I can see how that would be misunderstood for sure. And I think as teachers, Kim and Tracy and I have a huge responsibility to check ourselves and always pay attention to where we're saying I'm greater than because I am this, because I'm that, because I understand this or that. That's a responsibility that we need to take on, and we need to communicate as well. And even talking about, what was the other thing you were saying, Tracy, about empaths?
Like just something I've noticed, especially like I would say not even necessarily since the world closed, but since empath became a thing, because I feel like that was the buzzword before Ascension symptoms came up. It was like, oh, everybody was like, oh my God, I just realized I'm an empath. And I'm sitting there going, everybody's an empath. Yes. But my resistance specifically to empath, I was like, as soon as I identify myself as empath, which I don't even like to use that word for myself as a label, because then all of the other shit, for lack of a better term, comes with it, from the perspective of, well, I'm an empath, so now it takes me out, right? Now I'm sick all the time, or now I'm right. And again, it's that idea of disempowerment. It's no different than, making a comment like, oh, the moon is in this phase, therefore I feel like shit. Right? Like, to me, it's just again, it is that oxymoron, right? It's like, how do we harness the magic of the moon, or how do we harness the beautiful gift of being an empath so that we can use it for ourselves, with ourselves, and to be of service, rather than it being another thing that kind of like takes us out of the game, if that makes sense.
I like that a lot. And I like the fact that all of us sort of tend to really check in with ourselves to make sure that that's where we're operating from the understanding that all humans are spiritual beings, all humans are empaths. It is something that we do naturally. Naturally, we meet another human, we feel them, we experience them, we know what's happening with them, we understand the other human. It's wonderful. And to feel their suffering and think that's not wonderful, well, it kind of goes against your humanness, your ability to be compassionate, your ability to be empathetic. So taking yourself out of that and referring it in your mind, changing it in your mind that it's something different, is really common for us to do. We tend to do that. And with the ascension symptoms, the reason I like to talk about them, because when they were happening for me for quite a few years, and I had nowhere to go with it. I didn't know what was happening for me. So I like to be sort of on the forefront to let people know what that actually means if your body is experiencing these different symptoms. But I'll let Kim comment as well here.
Yeah.
So I really believe that everything we experience is self-created. And if we want to call them ascension symptoms, I mean, it's our actions we take that open us to receive these experiences, right? And I'm very much on the same page with you, Tracy, where, the labeling, what it does is, it creates that conditioned mind where there's an expectation of a certain outcome. I know when I first did my Reiki training, and I was basically taught that, oh, now that you have been trained in Reiki, you're going to feel everybody's stuff, and you're going to have to ground yourself, and you're going to have to clear yourself, and all of this. And that was my experience, because that was my belief. And then I realized that I could change my belief, and I created a new belief that I could be aware of people's stuff, but I don't need to hold it. I can sense it and leave it. And after doing that, since then I have never grounded myself before a session. I really don't clear myself after unless I feel like I need to. So my whole experience changed. With the labeling, that's where we limit ourselves, right? And I think we overcomplicate so much with these, the labels and the conditioned mind. I mean, if we can just simplify it, let's just say that nothing's permanent. Things are always changing. Every single moment, everything is changing. And, rather than defining or segmenting or whatever we're trying to do to make it complicated, let's just simplify it and say we're always changing. And every experience is an opportunity to change, to grow, to evolve, to expand. I think that's really what we're all here to do and capable of doing, is just continue to expand. And we're all doing it. We're all just doing it at a different pace and a different speed. And each time you expand, there's new sensations that we feel. There's new symptoms, if you want to call it that. And I just keep coming back to let's just find the simple way to move through it and not get so overcomplicated about it. Like I said, that's what I've been really practicing here. And if I can share just a little bit about what I shared today, that kind of became clear for me is, and we've talked about it. We've talked about it in our work, in our world, about mirroring, right? Whether you call it triggering or mirroring. And I really kind of had a deeper awareness the last few days of how every single person is a mirror for every other person, right? I'm a mirror for you two are a mirror for me. And not just for, the discomforts, it's for everything. I started to realize that the people that I admire, that I look up to, that I envy, that I'm jealous of, what they're showing or mirroring to me is the potential that I have not yet reached. Right. And then the people who mirror a discomfort, a trigger, an irritation. Okay. What I started to realize when I pay attention to that is almost every time, if not every time, I do the same thing. So I'm learning the type of person I want to be and the type of person I don't want to be. And I can't think of a better way to grow than to have the understanding of who I want to be and who I don't want to be. And to me, whether you call them symptoms, whether you call it leveling up, that's where the information is for me to mold myself, I guess, or shape myself into who I really am, who I want to be, my truth, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And part of what I love about that, Kim, that I'm realizing as you're talking about it, is part of my hesitation to the term Ascension symptoms is the word symptoms. Because if we tap into when we use that word and how it's connected to us, right, as we often, 9 times out of 10, we're using the word symptoms when there's something wrong with us. Right. And to me, that's disempowering in and of itself. Right. So to bring something beautiful, like, expanding into our light bodies, into the other word, which is that there must be something wrong with me, it's almost like there's this huge disconnect there from a vibrational level. Right. And the other piece that I love about what you're saying, and I've had many conversations with people around this, and I've done a ton of work for myself around this too, is, because as some of you know, like I'm a modality whore. So, like I love to learn and I love to pick up tools and I love to get new trainings and I have all of these things, right? But what I just learned, like really only in the last couple of years, is that, it's the process for me is about, I learned that modality, but I take what I need and I leave behind everything else, because a lot of the modalities that are being taught that are rooted in more of the, the ancient traditions and whatever, if they're still operating in, let's call it maybe the old paradigm, then they still have that programming around it, that there's like this element of sacrifice, right? Like you mentioned, like in my Reiki training, they told me now I have to experience everybody's stuff and I'm not going to feel good. And I'm like, no, that's fucking bullshit. Why do I have to suffer if I'm a healer? Why do I have to, suffer or sacrifice if I'm a light worker? Like, to me, that is I'm so fucking done with that. Like, I did do that and I'm not willing to do that anymore. But I feel like as a whole, we're in this big process right now where people are starting to wake up, I guess you could say, or to realize that aspect and to understand that we can actually do it differently, if that makes sense.
We have to recognize that there was a time in this world where we thought the world was flat. There's an evolution of humans. Yeah. Humans evolve. We grow, our minds expand. And it's absolutely, it doesn't make sense to me that we wouldn't understand more, that we wouldn't be given the opportunity to know more about ourselves and about this world. There is so much that's available to us. Where we are today is not where we're going to be next year. We might look back at this video and go, "How that was crazy that we said that back then. Now we know this," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to be open to the idea that there is so much more for us on this planet. And if our bodies are having these openings, these expansions, amazing. Probably they always have been having that. We just are now talking about it. There's probably never been a time in history that the humans haven't been evolving and adding more light into the universe and creating more space for us to be more loving and kind. That's probably always been the goal. I can't imagine a world where the goal has been for us to have wars and to harm each other. I don't think that's ever been the understanding of where we're going. I think we've always been going in this direction, and let's just go there. Let's go there with less and less resistance. So that's kind of my theory on the ascension, because, and to leave anyone behind is almost, it doesn't make sense, because everyone has a heart, everyone has a soul, everyone has the opportunity to know this. So why wouldn't they know it?
Yeah, I love that, Sheila.
Tracy, I just first of all have to say thank you for expanding my vocabulary, because modality horror is one I haven't heard yet. I almost want to go down to Cowsand Road and get you one of those custom-made bracelets that says that.
Right?
See, learn something new every day.
It just fell out. I don't even think I've ever said that before. So,
We're all growing, right? Change happens every day. So I love that. I'm with you, Sheila. I think we resist so much. We're so quick. When everything is comfortable around us, this is something I've noticed on this trip with myself and others. We've been having a great time here, and it's bittersweet to be going home. But there's been times where I can see, when the environment is just great, it's so easy to be open and to be trusting and to be vulnerable and to be curious. But as soon as there's a little bit of discomfort, right, it's resistance, it's pushing away, that uncomfortable energy comes up, and it's like, why do we do that, right? We've just been conditioned to do that. Like I said, I've been working really, really hard, paying attention to that, and my whole experiences, my outcomes are changing. I'm even really focusing on like the whole detachment thing. We've all done this in our yoga training in the Eightfold Path, and we know the root of suffering is attachment. And I've really even been trying to detach myself from any outcomes. And it's so freeing. It's so freeing. It's changing my whole experience of every day. And also detaching from any expectation of others' outcomes around me. And I'm loving it. And I'm hoping I can go home and continue to practice that in my comfortable environment. I think if I can do it in a challenging environment, it should be easy. But we all know it's easy to fall back into old patterns and habits too. But I do think we tend to complicate things so much. And maybe that's why, like I said, you're the creators of our experiences, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. 100%, we are the creators of them.
Yeah, I love that. And even, in terms of detachment, like even the expectation that, I'm going to go to this healing session, which means I'm going to feel shitty, right? Or I'm going to be around this person, so I'm not going to feel good. Or when I have, an upgrade or my energy shifts, it's going to be hard, like whatever that is, right? Like those beliefs that automatically drop us into struggle are the ones that we need to detach from, because then everything that happens, whether you want to call it an ascension symptom, an energetic upgrade, whatever that is, would have so much ease within all of our bodies, right? Like mentally, spiritually, physically, and energetically. I love that.
And I don't know about the two of you. I have a feeling you'll agree with me, but I can honestly say, when I look back now at times where, my desired outcome didn't happen, there was always something better instead. Always something better instead. Whether it was, your plane's delayed, or your trip gets canceled, or you didn't get this job, but then 2 months later you got a better job, right? I mean, it's happened enough for me, I think, that I trust that now. But I remember being in that place many times where when my desired outcome wasn't there, it was resistance, it was blame, it was everything to do but take responsibility. But when we start to take responsibility, we open ourselves up to a lot more potential, right? Rather than limiting ourselves to only this experience, I open myself to these other possible experiences. And that's how I'm really choosing to live my life right now.
Yeah, I love that. And for me, it is absolutely like, and I talk about this a lot in my own programs, the idea of radical responsibility, right? Because if we take radical responsibility for ourselves, then we don't have to be in suffering, right? But it's when we fall into, in my opinion, those programs of disempowerment, whether that's connected to Ascension symptoms or empath or anything else, then we give away that responsibility, right? And then things are no longer happening through us and for us, but then rather we're victim to, they're happening to us, in my opinion. But Sheila, what's your take on that?
Well, I think as like what we're talking about here is we're evolving into a new awareness. And when we, like what Kim was saying, when things happen, it's better. It always turns out better. And I can just imagine my guides watching me, have a hissy fit because I didn't get that job or that boyfriend or whatever. They're like, hold on, we got something better for you. Just hold your horses here. And, as we evolve as humans, I believe we have guides. I believe that there are guides around for us. I channel them. I talk to them. I understand them. There's no misunderstanding in my mind that there's guides around us. So why would I go against their great wisdom? And every single time they come around and I speak to them and I understand them, gosh, they're wise. They're so wise. I can't even imagine what they say. My intellect is not there to even imagine what they're bringing forward. I'm always just blown away by their wisdom. So why wouldn't I trust them? Why wouldn't I understand that there's something greater for me and around me and utilize that rather than sitting in my stuckness, that fighting against that resistance? And like we said, and it all goes back to all of it. It goes back to the resistance, the ascension symptoms. What we're suffering in is our resistance to letting go and letting the light in, letting the information and the new information, the more expansive information come to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So go ahead, Kim.
I was just gonna, as I was listening, I was thinking, I missed last week because of, I can't even remember why, internet issues or something, but what I just was realizing, because last week was manifesting, and by letting go of that resistance, we really open ourselves to manifest. And I just want to share a couple of things that I manifested so quickly and easily here because of me choosing to move through everything the way I am. We were coming back from the jungle and we're driving in the back of this, kind of tuk-tuk truck. And we go by and I see this Dunkin' Donuts, right, in Thailand. I said, geez, I'd like a donut right now. And we pull up to a red light, and I kid you not, like 2 minutes later, this lady's walking down through the traffic. She's selling bags of donuts. And then tonight, actually, just before getting on the call, Irene and I, we decided we're going to run over to Cowstown Road because we want to get one of these bracelets made for someone who is here with us, the ones that I was saying I'm going to get made for you. And we're walking, and we're not seeing them. And we get to the end and I said, okay, well, let's just cross and we're just going to go and we're going to find it. And as we're crossing the street, she walks right beside me, the lady who makes the bracelets. So like boom. And this is the stuff that's happening every day. I'm on the phone talking home and the feathers are dropping right on my feet. It's just things are showing up like that. And it's because I believe it's because there's no resistance.
Mm-hmm.
There's no resistance. I'm just open, right? And I think, it just kind of loops back around to last week's topic in manifesting is, how do we get there? This is a part of how we get there.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So
I didn't get the donuts, by the way.
Oh, you didn't? Oh man.
It's hot. Who knows how long they'd been out there.
Oh yeah. Fair enough.
But
Fair
I
enough.
manifested it.
That's perfect. And that, I mean, that's a good point too, is you can manifest something, but you still have to decide whether or not you're actually going to reach out and take it. Right? Yeah. Cool. So if I were to ask each of you, if you had someone sitting in front of you, could be a friend, could be a client, be whatever, and they were talking to you about ascension symptoms, what support or advice would you give them as they're moving through it? Because I know, and just in case this isn't like known, but my opinion is like they could last for an hour, they could last for a day, they could be like I'm fucking 10 days in now, right? So it's not necessarily a one and done. And I've also, I remember when I went to Greece, actually, now that I think about it, and I did have like a huge energetic upgrade there, and I was probably, let's just say, unwell for almost 3 months. Like it took my body a really, really long time. And I don't say that to scare anybody, just to give the example that like everybody's experience is going to be different. So what advice or support would you give someone if you were just in conversation with them or whatever? Sheila.
My advice or support would be to suggest that this is a fantastic thing happening for you. Nothing is against you. And the more you can move through it and allow it to happen, the more opportunity is there for you. Because the more we resist it, it just takes that much longer to happen, right? So I remember Sue Milligan was on our one of our in podcasts that Kim and I do. And she did a healing on me one time. And the whole time my mind was in resistance to her. I'm like, I'm not letting her in. I'm not letting her in. Okay, let her in. I'm trying to let her in. And I'm not letting her in. So we finished the session and I said, oh my gosh, Sue, like I just couldn't let you in. And in that moment, everything broke away and I let her in. So we finished the session and I finally let her in. But for a month after that, I was sick. I was really, really sick. And every time I thought of Sue, it's like, when you get the flu and whatever you last ate, you think about that and you're like, I don't want to think about that bowl of soup I just ate. That makes me sick. Every time I thought of Sue after, I would be like, I felt that difficulty. But wow, what came out of it was so powerful. My heart opened like it's never opened. Like that was the biggest release I had, to open my heart. So anytime you're experiencing anything that you believe is an ascension symptom, notice it, pay attention to it, and allow it to be the experience of you becoming your greatest self. And knowing that it can really, it can make you embrace the symptoms, embrace whatever's happening, and be at one with it rather than being separate from it.
I love that. Thanks, Sheila. Love that. Kim, what about you?
I agree with Sheila 100%. And I too would say, yes, resistance just prolongs the settling of what the experience is, right? But I would definitely say, along with surrender is to trust what's happening. Again, trust that it's happening for you, like Sheila said, and, to be gentle with yourself. And I think the other thing that's important, and this is something that I wasn't aware of for a long time, is to, match the flow, be in the pace of what's happening. I know when things are happening, I mean, it's exciting to know you're having an upgrade or downloads or ascension, whatever it is you're experiencing, whatever you want to call it. And we want more. That's our natural human nature. We want more. And it's important, I think, to allow for integration before we start to, go full speed ahead to the next thing. I know I was definitely like that before, and I've tried to slow down and just match where things are going. And again, everything is changing all the time. So that means there isn't this constant flow of moving through life, right? It's wavy. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. And I think the best way that we can tune into that is by turning inwards, right? And connecting and asking ourselves, our higher self, our guides, whoever you're comfortable with, is, what is, what can I learn from this? what can I learn from this? How can this help me to grow, to be closer to my authentic self, to be closer to my truth?
Yeah, I love
But
that.
trust, surrender and trust are the two kind of big words for me, I think.
Yeah, beautiful. And I
How
think
about
for
you?
me, yeah, like in addition, because I agree with both of you, but for me, like, so the way that I always look at it is, like energy moves way faster than our bodies do, right? Like that's why we have the experiences in our bodies that we have, is because like our bodies actually are like have to try and meet that energy, and that energy is often so much faster, or sometimes it's so much denser than our bodies. So to me, there's definitely a physical aspect that to really consider from the perspective of, number one, staying connected with your body, right? And every single day, really asking your body, okay, what do I need, right? What do I need to integrate this? What do I need to do to support this physically, right? Because the energy is there. It's just now our physical bodies are having to move through that. And, one of the things I even talk about in my healing sessions too is something called the cascade effect, right? And just because you can do something doesn't always mean that you should. Just because I could clear an Akashic record for you, or I could let go of a quarter or a contract, I also have to tap in and see, is your body not only ready to support that, but is your body also ready to hold that? Right. And that to me is sometimes why we see people looping in the same thing over and over again, is because even though the energetic work is done, the physical body isn't ready for it, or even maybe energetically they're not, or mentally they're not ready for it. So it's looking to find that balance, or that connection between the energy and the physical body, and then asking the body what it needs. And I think up until we had the huge world event that we had. I keep avoiding that word because I don't want to get flagged on YouTube, by the way. But up until we had that event, like, I think as a culture, we had been taught, like, push through. You're sick, go to work. You're sick, still do this. You're sick, still do this. You're sick, still do that. Right. And it forced us to have to step back and be like, I'm actually sick, I can't show up. I'm actually sick, I can't work. And I think for a lot of people, that was a really beautiful lesson to learn and to have the experience, that it's not always about pushing through. And so that would also be part of my advice too, is really, again, asking questions. The better quality of your questions, the better the answers you're going to get, and seeing what your body needs. You might have to step back. Like, I had to reschedule a client from last week when I had that headache, because there was no way I was going to be able to do an SRT, session, and be able to channel and do any of that with, all this pressure in my cranium and all of that. So I feel like part of it too is really looking at what do you have the capacity for, and what is the ask here? What is your body require, so that you can integrate it? Because if you don't give it that opportunity to integrate it, that's when it starts to kind of like prolong itself, or it's a lot harder than maybe it needs to be, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I would agree with that 100%. Yeah, I think Sheila, we even did a podcast maybe on like the wisdom of the body, and how the body knows exactly what we need, right? Whether it's rest or certain foods or vitamins or minerals. And I mean, the body is such a complex machine, and like everything else, it is always changing, right? So, I mean, we have to constantly be learning, okay, what is the body doing now? What does it need now? Right? And whatever it needs today, it's going to be different tomorrow. And the only way is to turn inwards and connect with that.
Yeah. I love that.
And I think the three of us need to be unapologetic for the understanding and the wisdom that we have in this field. I think the tendency for me in the past would be to be like, well, this is my belief, and I still tend to do this. I think it's important to preface things that this is my belief and this is what I understand. But I think as I move more into this realm of understanding in this energetic field, I do understand things. I do know things, and I do have great wisdom in this area. I've seen clients release things out of their physical form like that in a session. I've seen things happen that people might not want to believe happen. And I'm not going to apologize for knowing that. That's the wisdom that I have. And you two as healers have seen things just like I have. We experience things like out of this world things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's time for us to step up and really recognize that the world is not as linear, or the world is no longer flat. Mm-hmm. We do have an understanding, and we need to take that forward into the world and share that with others. And the funny thing is that people are resonating with it, not because they were believable, but because it's believable in their heart, in their souls. So this information about ascension symptoms, or whatever we want to call them, people understand this because they're experiencing it themselves. They're like, that makes sense. This is not just woo-woo. This is actually stuff that is happening in the world. Maybe it's always happened. And now I know exactly what's going on from this perspective at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love that. And I think it's also important to recognize that regardless of what we want to call it, right, that there's going to be an entire range of experience here, right, in terms of what it looks like. For someone, it might be that they're tired. There might be some fatigue. If, I mentioned some of mine were like, it's nasal, it's throat. And part of that is also going to be in relation to what kind of an upgrade you're receiving and what's happening for you, right? For other people, it might be that they're struggling to sleep, or their body temperature, right? Or Sheila mentioned heart palpitations. Like, there's so many different ways that it can show up, that there's also opening ourselves up to what that might look like or what's possible, right?
The last thing that comes to mind for me is just about, matching the vibration of what we want to experience, right? We float up and down that emotional scale, and what I try to practice and to teach to clients and family and friends is, when those discomforts show up, part of not being in resistance is being in a place of gratitude, that goes along with acceptance, grateful. I today am always grateful for the shittiest things that I've been through, because that's where the most growth has happened. That's where the healing has happened.
Yeah. I love that.
Gratitude.
I love that.
Gratitude.
Yeah. And I don't know why this is popping in right now or who might need to hear this, but what was actually popping in as you were talking, Kim, was mentioning that this isn't something that you require protection from. I'm not sure why it's coming up this way, but it's not about, I need to protect myself from this experience, or that there's a dark energy behind it, or anything like that, right? Like, remember, it's an upgrade. Right? It's an upgrade. It's an expansion of your energetic field. It's an expansion of your light body. It's not something to be like, I don't know why they just kept showing me like a brick wall. It was like, right? So I don't know if that's bringing up anything for either of you, maybe that you need to speak forward, but that was just something that popped in.
No, I think you're right with, it's the boundaries that we put on ourselves, right? Because of our limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Beautiful. Sheila, did you have anything to add to that, love?
No, I like that last thing that you said, Tracy. That really makes sense to me, because that is what I think is happening for a lot of us, is that the boundaries are being released, especially in our community. I mean, I like to surround myself with people that really are open and are available to everything and not closed off to anything. Not that they always have to believe what I say or do, but they're open. At least they're open.
Mm-hmm.
And in that openness, I think we can start to release the struggle, release the resistance. And like Kim said, a lot of her greatest growth came from the struggle. However, I'm of the opinion that struggle gets less and less. Like Kim's saying, she's on this trip, and the struggle gets less and less because of her awareness to not resisting what comes up. That, oh my gosh, I've been the greatest resistor on the planet, and I know what happens then, right? So I'm really open to less and less resistance, and allowing for for my guides to help me, to let them in to support me, let in, I let my best friends come and support me. Why wouldn't I let my guides come and support me? So I like what you guys are offering in your sentiments, for sure.
Beautiful.
If I could leave a quote, I think it would be, we are the creators of our suffering, and we can also end our suffering. The only ones responsible for ending it.
Beautiful. Is that a quote? Who said that? Or is that a Kim Wilkinson quote?
I did.
Okay. You said quote, so I just wanted to make sure.
We are the creators of our suffering, and we are the only ones responsible for ending our suffering. Yeah. That's how I see it.
And there's the empowerment piece.
It's simple, right? It's simple.
Yeah. And that's the empowerment piece, versus like we were talking, like I had mentioned at the beginning, and we were talking about plugging into the disempowerment of having the symptoms, right? So that's full circle, which I love. Full circle. Yeah. One and done. That's a beautiful place to end. Is there any last words either of you would want to drop in? Yeah, we're good.
I just want to thank both of you. It's great to see you. And as much as I love this place and I'm excited to come back, it'll be nice to be home and connect more with everybody online. So yeah.
Awesome. We're excited to have you back in the same postal code, the same zip code. Yeah.
Same day.
Totally. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Well, next week it is Easter Monday, but we are going to be having a show. We have a beautiful guest on next week. So you'll have to join us live for that and catch the big surprise. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, or I should say the bunny out of the hat, maybe, or the basket, whatever that is yet. But please
crack in the egg early.
Yeah, exactly. You have to come and see. But we, of course, welcome all comments and can continue the conversation over on our Facebook page. So please subscribe and like this channel and come over and join in the conversation with us. Because all views are welcome on The View. So we always love to hear how this resonates for you, what doesn't resonate for you, and we can have some conscious conversations over there. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you all next week. Take care.